We fire a silver bullet for International Women's Day. Diamond Diehards is on. Joe Rizzo here bringing you baseball along with the dog Jeff Healy. We have a very special show for you in honor of International Women's Day. Missy Coombes will join us. She pitched in the 90s and played baseball for the Colorado Silver Bullets. If you're our age, you're awesome. But you also would probably remember that time when a team of women were put together for a professional baseball team scenario, and they played games throughout the country for about a 3-year period in the mid 90s. I was over at ESPN Sports Ticker about that time, and we covered some of those games with game stories and stuff like that. So it's a big honor to have Missy with us tonight. All the stuff that you need to know about fmsgraphics.com for your printing and promotional needs. Check them out. Anything that you need. People on the Diamond Diehards bandwagon have started to check out FMS Graphics, and they're real happy about that. So anything printing and promotional that you need, fmsgraphics.com. And all the follows, diamonddiehards.com. It's live. It's not awesome. It's not spectacular. The Twitter feed has been added there now. So go follow us on Twitter and everywhere else. Facebook, if you're watching live on Facebook, you're already there, but make sure you join the group. And we have a Facebook group, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter, we have an Instagram, we have a Twitch. We're Diamond Diehards everywhere. The only place where we're not Diamond Diehards is YouTube, but we're there. So if you like to watch these things and you're catching it and doing an Uncle Paul, which is you've caught the live stream in and out, but then you want to go back the next day on your power walk, and you just want to listen to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then hit those subscribe buttons over there, and then go back and check us out on YouTube if you want to catch the video for it as well. We do all the segments tonight with Missy. She is going to join us for our modification of Die Hard Dads. And of course, we kick it off every time with our beloved veteran, our own Army veteran, who will do Veteran of the Day. That's the Dawg. Jeff, take it away.
All right, Riz, and yeah, fun one as always. A great Veteran of the Day that we're going to have for tonight in honor of Women's History Month that we're going through. I decided to pick US Army General Ann Dunwoody. So Ann wound up being the first 4-star, not only for the US Army, for actually all the military services in the U.S. First 4-star general, female general ever in the U.S. Armed Forces. She started out as a lieutenant, basically commanded at every level, including commanded a battalion in the 82nd Airborne, which is sort of the elite division in the Army. She could be the first woman to run Fort Bragg, again, one of the top top Army bases out there. And she finished up by commanding one of the major commands, one of the largest commands in the U.S. Army, as US Army Materiel Command. Basically, all the stuff the Army uses, as you can imagine, is quite a big task. It's like running the Army Walmart. Being in charge of 69,000 people, which is pretty awesome, across all 50 states and 145 countries. So basically over half the countries in the world. So just an absolutely remarkable woman. She retired after a 38-year military career in 2012. Fun little fact: I actually knew a young female captain, active duty, when I was over in Iraq, and she was just rotating out. And I was like, "Oh, what's your next assignment?" She's like, "Oh, I'm going to be general's aide." I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. For who?" And she goes, "Ann Dunwoody," which was just like like mind blowing. It was like a historic thing. So obviously she was very fired up for that, and I think she might have been the aide who did like this Army briefing, like a funny font or something like that, which is like a real gas for the Army staff side. So she had a pretty good sense of humor too. So anyway, our Veteran of the Day, again, very special one, 4-star U.S. Army General Ann Dunwoody. And with that, maybe we can help bring in our special guest, Missy Coombes. is going to join us. And Missy, you said you actually have some military connections that maybe you'd like to share.
Sure, I'd love to share. Well, first of all, I started with my nono, my grandpa. He was in the military. He was in Italy, actually, when he was in the military. Then my uncle as well, his son, and then going down a couple generations to my cousin, Michael Rizzo, who currently is a veteran and currently, I think, still works with the military as well.
Oh, fantastic. So that's great to have all those military connections out there. And thanks so much for go ahead and sharing it with us.
Did I detect a Rizzo in there?
Yeah.
Are you pulling zingers on me?
I'm a Rizzo.
Oh, wait. We got inside ball going on here. What's going on?
How about that? You get a professional baseball player on for, in honor of International Women's Day. And then the first thing that she does is lefty throws me a curveball when I'm looking for fastballs. You are a Rizzo? You're a Rizzo? How is that possible?
Wow. There we go. Very cool.
Or do I say
we learned our first thing tonight?
Yeah. Or do I say ciao, cugina?
Good stuff.
So tell me about this Rizzo connection.
My mom's, not my mom's maiden name, because it was actually my grandmother, my nana, her maiden name. So I have to get, she's Rosina Rizzo. My middle name's Rose, and I'm named after Rosina Rizzo. If you ask my mom, I'm named after my Italian grandmother. If you ask my dad, I'm named after Pete Rose, but that's a whole nother story. But I'm a Rizzo on my mom's side and her mom's family.
Wow.
I think that explains the hitting now. I was wondering about that, where that came in. Obviously, there's something in the Rizzo water about hitting in there.
Oh, I love to hit, but that's another.
Okay, so if you're watching on the live stream or you're watching on video at any point right now, I'm wearing it. I picked this shirt specifically for tonight. Now, this shirt was in honor of my late father, who used to have a saying, "Oh, the rules don't apply to me," and he was like the Rizzo of Rizzos. So, Missy, like, if you didn't have this attitude of the rules don't apply to me, I mean, we're literally not having this conversation right now. Like, maybe we would have run into each other at some Rizzo family reunion where you struck me out, like, all 8 times that I got up. I have to bat leadoff because I'm a Leo. But you had to just throw that thing out, right from the beginning. Is it that the rules didn't apply to you, or is it that you just never paid attention to them?
I have to say I never paid attention to them. And I think I get that from my mom, who's the Rizzo in the family. She's actually she was a Pepe, but that's because my grandfather's last name was Pepe. And she's a Rizzo. So one thing that she taught me from a really, really young age, and I can share a story if you would like, but from a very young age, she always used to tell me, be what you want to be, dream big, and don't let anybody else tell you can't, because they don't know anything about you, and they don't know what you're capable of. Only you know you're capable of. So she was the one that actually took me to my first baseball tryout, and she's the one that more or less said, just because you're a girl doesn't mean anything.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. So take us through the journey a little bit. Like, so what happened, Missy, was I'm sitting here and Dawg and I, Dawg and I talk 26 times a day anyway, like between our like Fordham thread and then like the alternate thread offline. And we're always like kicking around stuff for this. And we've seen you on Twitter and I'm like, oh, Dawg, if for International Women's Day, like Missy, that would be like a great get, right? And so I reached out and there you are. And then
of course we think of it like 7 o'clock on International Women's Day.
It doesn't matter. We still thought of it.
Might be a little late asking right now, but okay.
We got in under the deadline.
We're still working the planning. But
so
we're in the month though.
I have this notebook, this like old school where and I'm constantly, you know, I love like research and stuff like that. So I'm going in and I remember the Colorado Silver Bullets and I remember writing up, you know, every now and then some of the games. I don't remember the specifics and the details and all that, but I remember it was, you know, it was a thing and it was a hit and people knew about it. And I'm like, okay, you know, I'm doing research and I'm like, how much stuff could I and then I'm like, wait a minute, I just got to stop. I just got to stop because I think what could happen having somebody like you on the show is we can get so wrapped up in the accomplishments and things that, you know, happened 26, 27 years ago that we don't just sit here and talk to you like we're hanging out, you know, having beers in, you know, on the couch. And that's where the better stories really come out. So I halted it right after I looked it up and saw that the first game that you came into, I guess it was the first game that happened. You came in relief, and the starting pitcher for the other team was Oil Can Boyd. So I thought, like, anytime I can make a reference to Oil Can Boyd, that's for Ted, by the way, and Dawg knows Ted. That was for Ted. Oil Can Boyd starts, and then you don't get the start, but you come in relief, and you know, and then the next thing is all of a sudden you're a professional baseball player, right?
Yeah.
That's a really pretty cool career.
My first outing, and I shared with you, I'm a teacher and I'm a motivational speaker and I'm an educator, and I will always be growing myself and learning myself. And right then and there, it just shows you, failure means nothing, because in order to succeed, you have to fail. And that game wasn't our best game. It wasn't my best outing. I think it was the only time in my career I gave up actually 2 home runs in 1 inning. And that's my message about baseball that's so prominent, is that you have to have the mental makeup that, that happens to you. And so what? So what? You know what? Someday, the next outing, you're going to get the ball again and you move on, one pitch at a time, right? They say one pitch at a time.
Yep.
You got to live with that mantra. So it wasn't my best outing, but obviously it was quite memorable and meant a lot because it was the first time women had played professional baseball since, the League of Their Own and that whole time frame.
Yeah. That's just amazing, really. I mean, just especially as a pitcher, right? I mean, just the resilience you have to build. And I can imagine, kind of growing up, especially 70s and 80s, nowadays you'll see more girls playing baseball like longer into pony leagues and stuff like that, and maybe some high schools around. But back when you did it, I mean, that just wasn't done, right? I mean, and just I can't imagine just how challenging it must have been, but hopefully how developing that was for you and your character kind of going forward to basically, and you're facing adversity from like, practically the first time you step on the diamond, to be able to go through it. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, is that just me picturing it and was no big deal to you at the time? Or do you kind of look back and say, wow, if I hadn't had that sort of road, would I have necessarily gone as far?
It's interesting because in these times where I've been teaching online, I story tell a lot. I tell more stories than I've ever told as a teacher to my students, and they love my stories. And the resilience that I have as an individual really, really comes from the adversities that were hard in my life. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but I was very confident. And I always say, in order to play the game of baseball, you have to have some type of confidence or arrogance about you. I never ever thought of failure. I never ever felt like I wasn't going to succeed. But what really was, for me, was growing up in an Italian household, having English being not the primary language, and going to school and not fitting in school and not doing well in English. So for me, to answer your question, the adversity came with not being able to sit in a classroom and fully comprehend the English language like maybe other boys and girls were doing. And the classroom was my struggle, and my failure, if you really want to put it cleanly. And getting out to recess and getting out on the field was like my salvation. So for me, it was what saved me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah, that's I mean, the whole thing when you just look back at it, like Dawg, you were saying, I- I'm you know, a father of three, they're triplets, and two boys and a girl. And I've coached like every sport, whatever, through the levels. And rarely have I run into, the sort of like lone girl or the few girls playing on the boys team, whatever you want to call it. And my daughter has actually been one of those. One year she wanted to play flag football, but the year before two girls played, and then when she played, she was the only girl. And then she later became an ice hockey player. So the first season that she played, she was the only girl on her team. Didn't care. It just never occurred to her. Now she was like 9, so it didn't matter. Um, and then, but she was afforded the opportunity to be able to join a girls team the next year, and she's played girls, all the way through. She still plays, occasionally on some teams where there's, majority boys and stuff like that, like the JV team for high school. There were 4 girls on the team, and at one point in the last game, they all got to skate together at the same time, which was like awesome and incredible. And they keep up, it's good. But man, like Dawg, you were saying, back in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, I mean, it just wasn't even a thing. Like I played little league for however many years, and there was not one girl that played, just not one.
Yeah, I mean,
And then,
truly trailblazing, right? And back then, maybe you didn't know it, and obviously, like I said, part of the best part is you didn't care, and it managed to blast on through.
yeah.
So
So you find yourself with this, will like, let's fast forward and jump through to, the opportunity is brought to you to become a professional baseball player. So you had played, probably what, up through the high school level, and then played softball in college. And now you're a few years out of college, right? Like in your mid 20s. And all of a sudden, how does it happen? Like who contacts you? Like, let's get into that.
Okay. Well, just kind of going back just a little bit. My dad had great intentions for me, and my dad didn't want me to fail. And being kind of chauvinistic and a male, he tricked me. And I always joke around about it, but he convinced me to play softball in high school. So where my baseball career, for my first career in baseball, ended, I was asked by the principal of my middle school 9th grade team to play baseball. Unfortunately, that person had asked me to play baseball like in 7th grade. And so by the time 9th grade came along, it was a new principal. So I didn't play baseball. And my dad took me to a college softball game and said, if you start playing softball now, you might be able to develop your skills and get a scholarship to play collegiate softball. And so he kind of tricked me into playing softball. And I say tricked me because if I had one, I don't like to think of life about regrets, but if I had one thing that, if you ask me one thing I could go back and do over again, I would try out for the high school baseball team. And the reason being is because I never really failed at baseball. My last outing as a pitcher was 8 strikeouts in a Pony League All-Star game at 14. And then my dad convinced me to play softball. So I started playing softball, and I had never played with the girls. I struggled with that because I'm very competitive. It was a really hard transition. Talk about transitioning. Middle school was a huge transition for me. I had to be in girls PE. The PE teacher didn't like me. She thought I was going to hurt the other girls because I was too aggressive and I was very athletic. And, I didn't fit in. And so I transitioned into softball, going back to your question. So I played softball actually in high school. And then I got a scholarship to Cal State Fullerton and was a collegiate softball player at Fullerton, went on to be an All-American and had a successful career there. I wasn't a pitcher in softball. I never ever could make the switch from baseball to softball when it came to pitching. Being a lefty, I was a first baseman and an outfielder. And then I had actually graduated from college and was teaching for a few years. And Sue Enquist, who at that time was the UCLA softball coach, was contacted by Coors Brewing Company and the Colorado Silver Bullets about this all women's professional baseball team, and if there was any players from softball or baseball that she knew out there that would be interested in trying out for the team. So she's the actual person that called me and said, they're starting this all women's professional baseball team. Are you interested? And that's kind of where it started.
So you have like a tryout, you have to pass through that whole thing. Like take us through a little bit of that.
All right. So when Sue called me at that time, the Silver Bullets were having like a 5-day elite tryout in Orlando, Florida. And so they flew out a handful of players, maybe 10 to 20, and we were there for 5 days. So we got a really good look from the coaching staff. And at that time, they had announced that Phil Necro would be the manager. And then his brother, Joe Necro, was the pitching coach. And there were other coaches as well, I'm sure there, but I just knew those two because they were former major league players. And that meant a lot to me because I didn't really know what I was going to try out for. And the minute I saw who was going to manage the team, who was coaching the team, that it was a legitimate baseball team and not some type of, promotional, whatever it could have been, I was on board. And for me, it had been 10 years for me. And I walked, between the white lines, and I get chills right now because I felt home. I felt like I had returned to my home, and I had been away for a decade, and I had no idea that I had missed it so much and loved it so much until I walked across the white line with the ball in my hand. And it was a sense of relief to be home and playing baseball again. And that was kind of where it started for me.
Now, if I remember back correctly, a lot of your teammates were really not baseball players so much as they were softball players trying to like cram it in 6-8 weeks, whatever it was that you had to get ready for this. I guess it was like about a 50-game barnstorming season. Tell me if I described that correctly.
You described it correctly. And, when you talked about the first game and my first outing, that was my first outing in a game situation in 10 years. So, and I had aged 10 years. I didn't get the 10 years development, now that I'm a parent. You say, me from Twitter, and you see, I comment all the time to young baseball players, and baseball is my love. There's so much development. There's so much out there. Things have changed and evolved so much. And I lost 10 years of development. And so, I'll never know what I could have accomplished in that 10 years. And I don't have regrets about it because I loved playing college softball. I love what I was able to accomplish with my teammates and that whole experience. But, coming back to baseball was hard. And most of my teammates, like you said, had either never played baseball and had only played softball. Some of them had played softball, but they had played baseball in high school. Two of our pitchers had pitched through high school and gone with this first scenario that you threw out there about me. I didn't play in high school, but they did. So they came onto our pitching staff. And we had a few pitchers that had played baseball, but I think Kelsey Whitmore now with Cal State Fullerton softball, she also plays baseball. So that's a whole nother thing. You have women that can play both baseball and softball at the same time, probably not right exactly the same time, but throughout the year they play one or the other. That wasn't an option for me as well. So
I can't imagine like your shoulder not just like exploding, like going out to try and do like a tryout after 10 years. Like, let me just pick this up. I mean, that's like my ligaments are like popping just thinking about like going up and uncranking one.
Well, that's another thing too. I'd been throwing to softball for 10 years and I hadn't really picked up a baseball. So, but my mantras on the mound came back real quick. When I look at film, because I still have some videos, I look at all the stuff that's out there now with like, you can break down and analytical stuff that you have, Pitching Ninja and all that. Yeah. There's a lot of work that I could have done on my technique. A lot of things that I could have improved upon, but I had good form for that day and that time in history. If you look at, how pitchers and hitters were, if you look at old Major League Baseball footage, you know, it wasn't like the cookie cutter, everyone looked exactly the same. And not saying they do now, but there was unorthodox swings there. Yeah. Anyway. So.
Yeah. All right. So what's the scouting report? So I'm going in. I'm digging in nervously against Missy on the mound here. So what am I facing? We got a plus fastball. We got a lot of movement. You're a lefty, or how? What's the scouting report?
All right. I'm a crafty lefty.
Okay. Oh, those are hard. All right. You're off to a good start already.
Randy Myers. I don't know if you're familiar with Randy Myers. He played with the other teams, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was a crafty lefty, I was told. And Joe Negro introduced me to him, and we had a little conversation when we were in San Diego. And he says, you know, this lefty throws like you know, you just kind of throw it up there. So basically, when you're hitting off me, the ball's never going to come in straight. And if it comes in straight, actually, that's my off day.
Well, that's...
you know, when I pitched with the Silver Bullets, Joe Negro, he had me switch over to a two seam. So I threw a two seam fastball only.
Okay.
And my ball, you know, on my fastball, it'll naturally, I have natural ride that way. Mm-hmm. It'll run. My son tries to teach me run, ride, you know. Yeah, they didn't have those directional things and the lingo wasn't the same, but my ball went that way. Slider. My manager in Little League was a former Major League Baseball pitcher. His name is Tom Dukes. He had played in the Major League, and he taught me the slider that I threw as a Silver Bullet. So I had a slider, and then
how old were you when he taught you?
How old when I learned my slider? I was on his team. I made majors as a 10-year-old, so. When I was 10 years old.
10-year-olds with sliders.
Yeah.
And your arm did explode. I mean, it's amazing. Like that now, forget it. Yeah, they'd be done.
At this point, I probably can't, you know, I'm 52 now. I probably barely can break a pane of glass, but I do feel it. I do.
So, wow. I don't know, Dawg. I feel like I'd probably bat lefty against the lefty. I feel like I might get a better look on it, a little better look on it. I mean, I'll still strike out, but I mean,
actually, you'd have a lot of success because for whatever reason, I struggled back when I played with the Silver Bullets. It wasn't like now where you have a lineup that's like 50-50 lefty, righty. You know, it still was one of those scenarios where you'd have one or two lefties maybe in a lineup. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm sure they didn't keep this statistic back then. And that's one thing I would love. I'd love to see all the Silver Bullet statistics that they didn't take back then because we didn't have computers on the sideline like they do now. You know, you didn't have a tablet. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to say lefties hit me pretty well because knowing my hitting, they like the inside pitch. And for whatever reason, when I was throwing from this slot, I threw inside too much to lefties and I needed to work. It's something I want to work on now. But I'm out of time.
you're like Darren Oliver. You're like a tremendous strat reliever though. Lefty who gets righties out. We love that.
Yeah.
Well, you know how they talk about like they talk about the back foot slider. I pitched at Fenway, and I never forget this. I threw a back foot slider to this guy that swung and missed. And the ball hit him in the thigh, I think, or in the knee. I don't know if it was in the lower, but it hit him in the leg. So I was like, okay, that was a good slider. I swung at it, but it hit him.
She's like, just tosses it out. Yeah. So I pitched at Fenway.
In Fenway.
I'm like, I once bought like a $30.
Going to Fenway is pretty cool.
I once bought a $30 hot dog at Fenway. That's about it.
Oh man!
Wow.
Let's see. So I'm guessing a Dodger fan growing up.
Of Dodgers fan, yes.
Dodgers fan growing up. Who was your favorite growing up?
You know, it's funny you asked me that question because I've been asked that lately, and I can name the whole starting lineup for the Dodgers. And so at that time, it was that lineup specifically. But then when I would watch baseball with my dad, it's players. You know, I liked players. I mentioned that I'm named after Pete Rose. You know, watching him play with his intensity and how he went about the game. I liked him a lot as a player. The starting lineup, I was lucky enough to go to Dodger games growing up. My grandfather had season tickets.
Oh, great.
Barbie was at first, Lopes was at second, Russell was at
I
short.
mean, such a great team then too. I mean, perfect time.
Dusty Baker was in left field, which I actually got to meet as a silver bullet. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Lefty, I'm honored to wear your number 12." And I said, "No, Mr. Baker, I'm honored to wear your number." He was with the managing at that time, the San Francisco Giants. Rick Monday was in center and Reggie Smith was in right. Either Yeager or Ferguson were catching. And then pitching, obviously, you'd have a variety of different pitchers. I know Jerry Roy was one of our pitchers. Charlie Huff was one of our relief pitchers. So
pretty stacked. So the whole team, you dug. Nice.
So that's the lineup I knew. And then once that era of them playing and they got traded away and moved to other teams, I'll always be a Dodgers fan, but I like players. You know, even today, I love players. I love watching players pitch. I love players, following players.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's like where we come from, right? So we share that in common. We're at the same age, same names. I could have named that lineup too, by the way. By the way, go ahead. Sorry.
Fernando. Let's say it's like Fernando.
That was the 80s. I was in high school.
Yeah,
middle
that's
school.
True.
So I was at the Yankee Dodger World Series game where Reggie Jackson stuck out his ass and got hit by the ball, where Bill Russell was trying to pull BS by dropping the ball. I was sitting in first base in the loge seats, and it was directly in my sight line, my 9-year-old sight line. Right there. I had no person could have had a better view of that than me. I could still picture it right now in my mind's eye. And yes, the Yankees got the better of the Dodgers then. You guys got us in 81. So we're all good. As long as we got more, that's all I care about. Then you guys got last year. So
Reggie Jackson, I have a Reggie Jackson story as well.
Oh, let's hear it.
I was the starting pitcher in the Kingdom. And growing up here in Southern California, I hadn't really pitched a lot on AstroTurf. And AstroTurf's a little quicker than a regular baseball field. And so I was a starting pitcher and I went out there in the first half inning, didn't get the results I liked, and a couple ground balls that I thought may have been, outs. Obviously the ball was traveling, they were hits. So I came off the mound and I go into the dugout. We were playing prior to the Mariners were going to be playing the Yankees that night. So we're in the visiting dugout. And so some of the Yankees are in our dugout because we're sharing their dugout. So I come off after my first half inning and I was a little bit hot, not very happy about that. And somebody comes up from behind me and grabs me and kind of gives me this bear hug, like puts his hands on his shoulders. And I was like, what? And he's like, Lefty, calm down. And I kind of like look, hi, Mr. Jackson. It was Reggie Jackson. He was just telling me I was doing fine. Obviously there was a lot of ball game left. I had to just let it out. I went out the next inning, it was fine, but he calmed me down, and that's my Reggie Jackson story. And I'm like, whoa, now I wish I would have had a moment to talk. But anyway.
How close do you turn around and slugging him? But the arms, I'm like, I can totally see twang.
The elbow, because it was one of those, when you're hot, it's like,
yeah, exactly. The last thing you want is that.
Yeah.
So, but it worked out pretty well.
My kids will vouch for that. I do have a temper.
Just make sure just make sure if you're going to punch him or elbow him that it's with the right, not the left. Get him with the right. So, before there was Kim Eng, the Marlins GM, before there was, Rachel Luba cutting the biggest per year deal as an agent, there was you. Your name's not in the news the way theirs is. That nonetheless, quite possibly without you having done what you did, maybe one of those doors at some point opened up their mindset to, especially Kim. She's like our age. She's actually from the town right next to me.
I got to meet her actually when she was with the Dodgers. She's amazing, and I'm so happy for her.
Wow. So, How about that? So did you, I mean, everybody, now, unfortunately, I can't remember if I ever met her. Like if I did, it might've been in high school. Um, so I wouldn't have known or you know, attached it at that point. But was she one of those people that you earmarked for, you know, for stardom and be like, oh, wow, there's just something different about her. Tell us about that.
Well, I didn't spend a lot of time with her because obviously she was working and it was at a Dodger game. I had that earlier that same day or maybe the day prior. I'm not sure. I had done a camp for the Dodgers. A friend of mine had brought me with her to Dodger Stadium. They were doing a women's clinic there at Dodger Stadium. So I had come to help and be a clinician and had been out there. So I was introduced to Kim. I didn't get to really talk to her. I didn't get to pick her brain or anything like that, but it would have been nice. But definitely I knew and followed her from that moment on. And I knew that she has been more than qualified to be a GM for a while. She even interviewed for the position with the Dodgers back then in that time frame. And, you know, I mean, you know, her story, she went and worked for MLB. You know, she's kind of been with different organizations, done lots of things. So her getting this opportunity has been a long time coming. And I think that is really, and you mentioned Rachel. I mean, I don't know her personally, but I follow her and what she's doing is amazing. And I, you know, it's great. I mean, heck, if I had to have someone represent me and get me a contract, I would want her in my corner and she should be negotiating for me. But I'm past my prime. So
Yeah, well, listen, you bucked the odds once before. You get, you know, I saw you, you know, by the way, and for those who are just listening to this and not watching it, Missy has the baseball in her hand and she keeps displaying it every time there's like, you know, some kind of thing relevant that we're talking about or just for the hell of it. So I sense that like that.
blanket.
Yeah, it
There you
is.
go.
It's what's the baseball's name? Linus, you know, it's like it's a blanket.
I,
Um,
I don't want everyone watching to think that I carry a baseball around. It just happened to be when I sat down in my seat, I stepped on it because my son, who's a football player, my youngest son's a football player, my oldest is the baseball player, but he had it in his football bag and he was using it to like roll out, you know, on the wall
Ah,
for his back. And so I actually tripped on it. So I picked it up so I wouldn't trip on it. And that's why it's on the table. I don't carry a baseball around with me daily, you know, at 52 years old. So.
yeah, we don't believe
she's
you.
jumping ahead
Yeah.
on the Die Hard section already. That's already like a great Die Hard story.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, it's like the Die Hard dad story. By the way, we don't believe you. We're pretty sure that you do carry a baseball like everywhere you go. You're driving, you're in
Wing it.
traffic, you're gripping that thing, you're trying to like turn it into dust, you know. So, all right, take us into this first appearance again. You know, Oil Can Boyd is your opposing pitcher, and you know, Bull Durham comes up and you're like this other team that's you know, supposed to be the Northwest League All-Stars, or you know, trotting out a bunch of major leaguers that are, you know, probably you know, maybe some that could still play and others that are close enough. And you know, you give up. You said it was the first time you gave up 2 home runs. What, in a game, did you say, or in an inning?
Uh, well, I don't know about in a game, but in an inning. Well,
Okay.
Leon Durham, he was one of them that took me yard because he's a lefty, and I know exactly who he is. And he hit a couple in the major leagues as well. But
Yeah.
like I said, I struggled with left-handed batters because knowing myself as a hitter, I like the pitch middle to in, and so I got it in his wheelhouse basically.
And who was the other one that homered off you? Was it a name we
You
know?
know, I don't recall.
Okay.
And I don't even know if the statistics, somebody asked me this question and I don't know how to find that statistic. I'm sure that somewhere, but I'm not sure. But I
Okay,
did
so
get my first strikeout though. You know,
There you go.
finished strong. I finished that inning with a strikeout.
Do you remember
So
who your first professional strikeout was?
I remember it was an exhibition. His name was Shane Halter, I want to say his.
oh yeah, he played in the majors. Yeah.
We played a 2 or 3 inning exhibition with the AA Royals at their facility. And I pitched and he was my first strikeout.
Nice.
He struck out on a slider that hit him in the kneecap.
Sure, That sounds good. Is he right-handed or left-handed?
He's right. Shane Halter, I would bet money that he was right-handed. I think he was like a right-handed outfielder, third baseman guy. I don't know. That's pretty. Dog knows I can go pretty deep sometimes on these guys.
Because I mean,
So
yeah.
part of our Fordham crew that we've talked about many times over the episodes, one of us went on to play in the majors, and his name was Miguel Jimenez. He pitched for the A's in the early 90s, like 93, 94. So a few of us happened to go down to Baltimore after he got called up. It was like a week after he got called up, and he hadn't debuted, and Ron Darling, like an old washed out Ron Darling, was starting the game, and he gets like lit up, and somebody else came in for an inning, and all of a sudden, like we're in Camden Yards, and we're cheering, we're going crazy when they bring our friend into the game to make his major league debut. How crazy is that, right? We go there. So
all
to
5,000 people in the stands at this point.
No, there were more. It was the Orioles were that was the early days of Camden Yards, so the place was packed. So to make you feel good about giving up only a home run to Leon Durham in your debut, he gave up a home run to Harold Baines and Cal Ripken in his major league debut. Both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. How about that?
That's one of my favorite current players is Trevor Bauer, and he's given up a couple home runs, but
I'm trying to think of it. I think he's probably hit a couple too. I gotta look. Usually I'm good at knowing which pitchers can hit. All the Mets, and then other guys, right? And all the
a big hitter. I don't know if he has a big league hit. I'm not sure, but I'd have to go check the statistics. But I don't even know how many hits he has, because remember, he was with the Indians.
Yep.
And then only the Reds for one season. So I don't know how many at-bats he's actually had in Major League Baseball to date.
Now, speaking of pitchers that could hit, I believe that we are talking to one, because didn't you lead your team in hitting at least one of the seasons?
I did. My first season with the Silver Bullets, I shut it down pitching late in the season, and we had like a few weeks left. I also played first base, and I also was a pinch hitter that Phil would use off the bench. And so I actually could hit, yes. But they didn't let us pitchers hit the Silver Bullets. We had a DH because our value to the team, I mean, we didn't have a minor league system where they could go get somebody if we took one in the, wherever. If we got hit or got hurt hitting, then our role was basically to be a pitcher. So I didn't get to hit my whole time as a Silver Bullet, so.
Well, but when you did, you raked.
I raked more in college softball when I played, then obviously I did. I mean, my at-bats with the Silver Bullets was limited, but I did hit okay.
So what about the adjustment from being a baseball hitter to a softball hitter? Because I've coached both, I've played both. They're quite different. Mm-hmm. And especially at the highest level there, which really is college. I mean, I know there's slightly, there's a little bit of a level after that, but mainly like the best college games are absolutely riveting to watch. They're awesome. But I mean, yes, you could tell there's a lot of similarities between baseball and softball, but there are a lot of differences as well, especially in the types of hitters, right? Like you could have slappers, you could have bunters, you could have, and what you don't see as much is just pure power hitters. You see much more versatility up and down through lineups, and every now and then, you have a couple of bombers on Oklahoma or something like that, right? But what kind of hitter were you, and what were the adjustments for you from hitting baseballs your whole life, and then having to hit softballs? I mean, obviously you did okay. You became an All-America, so.
Well, when I first started playing softball, my coach, Gary Hanning, he coached the Orange County Bat Busters in Southern California. And some of my first at bats, I'd never faced a rise ball in my life. And I had pretty decent hands getting through the zone. And so I would maybe get the bat on the ball up in the rising, basically. And he said to me one day, man, your pop-ups are the highest pop-ups ever, because I would just follow them up, like the pitch comes in here and it's coming up. And so my bat would just follow, up in the zone, and I would hit it really, really high. And probably most softball hitters that were taught softball only probably didn't hit pop-ups like I did.
You were launch angle before launch angle was cool.
Yeah, I exactly. I was launch angle before launch angle was cool. Dang, if I only had another at bat now. No.
They had the metrics. It's got launch angle like 75 degrees.
But in softball hitting, the pitcher supplies the power. And in baseball, you can't, I mean, you can, I don't want to say you can't, because you have Ichiro, you have guys out there that shorten up and, slap the ball basically quite well. So I don't want to say it's not possible. It's just, they're different games and they have different strategies. The bases are closer, the pitchers are closer, the ball is different. So there are similarities and there are differences. Yes.
Which did you prefer more, hitting the baseball or softball?
I just prefer baseball all around. I mean, I love softball. I don't not love softball, but and what softball provided me. I mean, I got a college education. I got to go to the College World Series in Omaha at that time as a softball player. I got to play on one of the best collegiate softball teams my freshman year. We were the best team in the country. We didn't end up winning the championship because that's not how it always ends up, but we were a really good team, and that experience, means the world to me. So, but I love baseball.
So how is it as a parent now? I might listen to your stuff. You talked about like your dad going out and having catch you, and it's we all had that. I did my natural story. We did a whole like baseball movies thing. I'm always tearing up on that one. I know for me it was big. I mean, obviously, I only messed around with it, but I mean, as a player, I can only imagine you then turn around and getting to have a catch with your kids. So it's something really special.
It is really, really special, and it kind of, the movie Field of Dreams is my favorite baseball movie, and it's the symbolism of the game. I know critics will argue, well, that's not the best baseball movie, but for me it is, because
that was the cover on me. That was too. And I get the natural and the Field of Dreams is right there. So yeah. I'm right there with you.
Just the whole symbolism of a catch with dad, I have to give that to my dad. First of all, the reason I am where I was as a baseball player or a softball player was my dad taking the time out of his day, coming home from work every single day and playing catch with me. That was our tradition, something we did in the front yard daily. It started when I was 2, before I could even really throw, and probably wasn't a real baseball, I would hope. But it was just a tradition and something.
I don't know. You're throwing sliders when you were 10, so it might have been a real baseball. I'm not gonna rule that one out.
A right-handed glove, and I had to ask. I don't know why my dad didn't pay attention to that, and sadly he's deceased, so I can't ask him. But anyway, I would catch with the glove, take it off, and throw. And I said I wanted a left-handed glove, and my grandmother said, "Well, you have a left-handed glove," and I'm like, "No, I want a right-handed glove." That's what I said. I was 4 or 5. I want a right-handed glove. And they said, "But you have a right-handed glove." And anyway, I wanted a glove for my right hand. And so we played catch. And then you go, fast forward to becoming a parent. And now I live in my dad's shoes. And, I get nervous. My son's a pitcher for UC San Diego. I can't go to games because they're not allowing fans, but like I'll watch the live stream games. And being a parent of a pitcher is difficult. I want some empathy from everyone out there.
Oh yeah.
Your kids go out there and, when things go well, obviously you're beyond proud. When things go wrong, you're still beyond proud, but you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your gut, you can't sleep, all that stuff. So my youngest, when he quit playing baseball and said, "Hey, I want to play football and basketball," I'm devastated. And at the same time, I'm like, whew. If that makes sense. But
100%. Yep.
I feel it. And it's funny because my dad was a pacer. My dad would always walk the outfield and pace, and he never sat down during our games, and he would pace. And so now I get where that comes from. I don't pace like him, but when I'm sitting there trying to sit there, it's difficult. Like I'll be with my fingers. I need my baseball in my hand. It's it's hard. It's hard. And as a parent, we have good intentions for our kids. We want to see them succeed. We want to be there and them to know that they're going to fail, and we're okay with that too. And it's hard. I'm sure if you ask, my youngest son has not wanted me to coach, and anything I have to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's not a gender thing, really. It's just how he's programmed. My oldest son, he came to baseball and loved baseball on his own. You can never force somebody to love something. It has to be from within themselves. So we share that. And the catch with him, when COVID shut down his season, he came back home and we went out a few times and we got to have a catch. He throws a little bit hard, and I have to say I have glasses now that I didn't have back in the day. So it is a little bit scary having playing catch with someone throwing 80 at me. And that's just playing catch. That's not actually
topping out
velocity, but that's the catch with my son. So
wow.
Great. Okay. So that's when it's your kids, right? That's one thing. Yeah, and you hope that if you're coaching them that they'll listen to you. And sometimes you take a step back, there's another coach, and maybe that coach resonates with them. Any sport, right? Not even just baseball. But with this age of social media, right? So you have boys, right? And you're not there. You're a teacher, but you're not coaching girls today, right? But on social media, you see these amazing videos, and we were talking about her just before. There's a girl. She's a baseball player, Lily Martineau, and she posts these videos of she's taking 100 cuts a day, 1,500 cuts a week. She's got this great lefty swing that Dawg, I called it out right in the beginning. I'm like, that's Lance Berkman's swing right there, except for like almost breaking the bat on her back. Well, that was Glenn Braggs that broke the bat on his own back, and he was righty. But she's got like Lance Berkman's swing without, with like a little back foot, difference maybe, but like, and
she's calmed the back foot down a little bit too.
Yeah,
I kind of like that. She's not lifting up as much.
But you're able to connect with somebody like that in a whole different way, some 25 years later. Like what does that mean to you?
Well, that means a lot to me because I follow Lily. I came across her on Twitter, probably as you guys did. And like, I'm her biggest fan. She posts videos, it seems like daily. She's playing high school basketball. I told you I sent her a message about connection balls and things that she's working on as far as her arm action and stuff like that. The first video I saw of her, I sent it to my oldest son, who has gone to Driveline, who has gone to the Texas Baseball Ranch, who has worked with Warren Bauer and Jim Wagner at Throw Zone. And so I said, what do you think of these mechanics? I sent the video, and he said, wow, she's got pretty sound mechanics. And she has a few things to clean up, but she's only a freshman in high school, and she's only going to get bigger and stronger and get better. So her work ethic, I mean, she puts in the time and she does the reps. Good things are coming from her in the future. Whatever her goal and her dream is, I'm her biggest fan. We're like what do you call it? Social media friends, or stranger friends, as they call it. And someday I hope that I get the opportunity to travel and go watch her play live. I'd love to meet her someday. She's inspirational to me because she's somebody that's living a dream of hers, but it's like I can see myself in her, if that makes sense.
And you help pave the way, right? I mean, that's it.
I'm always
come up and can point to it
and encourage. And it doesn't have to be, for all the young boys out there. One of her teammates follows me now, and has put me in the tag. I don't know I have to say I'm new to social media when it comes to the proper terminology of everything, but he tagged me. I think he was on MLB Network, had featured him, and so he tagged me in his retweet of that. And so I follow him and going to give him input if he asks. And so that's what I do. You know, I'm a fan, and I do know the game. I don't know all the new analytical stuff. You know, I have an opinion on the old school, new school stuff. I'm very opinionated about baseball. I know a lot about baseball. And also to give a shout out to Hunter Green. Hunter Green is a young man that we all will know his name soon here. He's with the Cincinnati Reds. And
All right.
oh my
Oh,
God.
why the special shout out for Hunter Green? Let's
Yeah,
get the inside baseball on that.
Yeah.
Well, my son went to Notre Dame High School with Hunter. So I know Hunter going back to when he was a sophomore junior year. I met him at Notre Dame High School, and my son was on his team when all the major league scouts were pretty much taking up all of our parent seats right behind home plate. And I had this friend named Big Show. He's sadly passed away, but he would always save me a seat in between all these scouts. And he'd say, Missy, come here, I got you a seat. And so I actually on my phone have video of Hunter pitching in high school. And I had the thrill and the privilege to watch this young man thrive at the high school level and develop. And obviously I've had conversations with him back then, and I'm a fan. I mean, a fan, a friend, a support. And just recently on Twitter, somebody I posted, Pitching Ninja had asked, you know, what do you want? 103 fastball, you know, giving up 3 runs like he did in that half inning, or 95 and getting 3 outs. And I said, I'll take the 103 in that situation with the 3 runs. And I made a comment that he does have secondary pitches. Well, some Reds fan wanted to come at me and say, oh, he doesn't have anything. Well, then we got in this exchange of, I was trying to, through Twitter, explain this young man has had Tommy John surgery. He has not pitched in a game in 2.5 years. He's gone from an 18-year-old to a 21-year-old. So give him more than a half an inning before you start judging whether, you know, he has it or not. He's throwing 101, 102, and 103 in his first 3 pitches. The kid's going to be fine. He has all the ability in the world. He's a fine young man. He does a lot for, you know, the game of baseball, and I'm on his side, you know, and I watch his development. His dad is my Facebook friend, so I get to see some of the footage and video that other people don't. And he's putting in the work and coming back, and he'll be fine, but he's still only 21 years old. And you don't just all of a sudden pitch, you know, I can only imagine how it was feeling. I'm sure he was pumped and ready to go, but he's got the adrenaline of he's back on the mound and he's with the Reds. And so, you know, the pitch that's a slider and the guy leaves the yard on his first breaking pitch. I mean, give me a break. You know, there's side pens and there's game pens, and I mean, games and side pens, and the adrenaline you have when you're playing in a game is not the same as when you're practicing on the side. So, you know, that was my little exchange with this man that then he kind of wanted to throw at me. Well, I played softball too, and he made a couple of rude comments, and I kind of said, okay, well, do you throw 103? And then he goes, well, do you throw 103? And I was like, okay, you go back and read the thread, and you know, more power to you, whatever.
He's like, do you throw 103? You're like, no, but when I throw 86 after I just threw a 68-mile-an-hour curveball, it sure looks like it.
Claiming that at 52 years old, I threw 103, or even in my prime that I threw 103. But then, you know, if you really want me to go into baseball knowledge, how many guys were throwing 103 back in the 90s? You know, you're talking the average fastball. And like I said, I am pulling this out of just a thought process. You know, most guys in the major leagues, the average speed probably was anywhere from 86 to 88 to maybe 90, 92, 93. Now, yes, there was Nolan Ryan. Yes, there were guys throwing 100. I don't want to say there was nobody throwing 100, but, and the radar guns were different. The technology was different. So, it wasn't like everyone was, you know, now to be in the major leagues, you have to at least hit 92 on the radar gun to even get looked at by a scout, I'm guessing. And I'm not a scout, so I don't know. I'd have to go ask them. But
Yeah.
if you're not hitting 92, you're probably not going to get scouted right now.
Some major league team should just go in and get like 5 Bob Tewksbury's and just see how they like. No one would be able to hit that guy right now. He'd throw like 81, and it would be like all wherever he wants.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't be able to touch it. They would be so far out. They would fall over. It would be hilarious.
Yeah.
And I think, Missy, I think you were showing your arm slot before. You should call the Rays. I think your arm slot is like the one arm slot in their bullpen that they don't have. I think you could go in there and get a big out for them.
Oh, that's funny. I'm sure there's some other lefty that's playing on the USA women's baseball team that has that slot right out here.
There we go.
Never know.
There you go.
I was gonna say something to the arm slot and Tewksbury, but anyway.
No, go.
Yeah.
This is the gold.
I had a senior moment. I forgot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it must not have been that important then. No, so locating pitches and just like now we're just talking about the game, right? So now we're just baseball people who are obsessed. And a few shows ago, we had on Jeff Fry, who I'm sure you've seen all his stuff on Twitter.
Facebook, or not Facebook, Twitter. Like I've commented on his tweets, and we follow one another. So I don't know him, but I know him, kind of thing.
Yeah. So he's for those who are not indoctrinated, go follow 03J Fry with an E at the end, and or do the hashtag she gone.
Now we got she here. We got she here, and we had she gone. So we got both.
Yeah.
she on.
She on.
You got it all.
Wow. Dawg is in Dawg's.
I'm far away here.
Dawg's in good form.
This is full funny for a credit analyst.
Yeah.
On my Zoom here.
Dawg's usually like it's 8 days from now, whereas usually this funny, which is our annual St. Patrick's Day gathering, which hopefully will be annual again this year.
Only daddy talks like that, kids.
Yeah. So no, but Jeff Fry does these great videos where he finds these quote unquote hitting gurus and now pitching gurus that are teaching these kids like, crazy stuff. And instead of like, thinking the game, right. And the stuff with the armbands and, instead of calling pitches with your catcher, it's, there's 12 things on your armband and you get a number and it's whatever that number, you throw that pitch in that situation. And you got players that are, not able to think for themselves, or they're concentrating on things like launch angle when, let's face it, like put the bat on the ball. I mean, and if you have power, eventually you'll figure out how to put it over the wall. Like it's not going to, it's not going to hurt you to hit, if you're good enough with this launch angle thing to hit 50 home runs, then if you flatten it out, you'll probably hit 350 with like 45 home runs. Right. So why not just do that? And you must see this stuff, Missy. And let's call you a deep baseball thinker, because you've been ingrained in it. You've thought the game at so many different levels, so many different ways for so long. Like, what do you think of this stuff that's out there? Do you find any of it to be rewarding? Do you think that these gurus are messing up the kids? Like you said, you're opinionated about the stuff and you gave us a little taste of it, but I'd like a bigger taste.
Anything that somebody tells you to do, and it's not just baseball related, but we're talking baseball. What's the purpose and reasoning behind it? So some of the training modalities that people have come up with definitely work. Now, with that said, talking about Shigon in the video, the one thing that I see missing, and I'm an old school traditionalist, when you look at video of the greatest hitters of all time, there's a few things that you consistently see all the time. Their shoulders rotate, their head stays still. So when you look at pretty much, from the chest up, it looks consistent. And when you see these gurus and you see a head jerk, one of them, for example, that Jeff shared, you would never want, your head moving because you're trying to hit a moving ball. So you have to see the ball. And in order to see the ball, your head has to stay still. You have to be able to disconnect your shoulders from your head. So when you swing, if your head's coming out just slightly, that little is enough to lose your ability to hit the ball. And so I guess going back to the whole guru young, you have to learn to have a general swing first and foremost, and then build upon that. So when you talk about the launch angle and all these other components of it, you first of all have to develop a solid biomechanical swing. And that's what I think is missing when you possibly, and I don't know, I'd have to go really, I'm not going to attack gurus because I'm sure that they have their clients that have gone on to do great things. So I always ask that question. So I don't want to be critical, but I want to go, okay, well, let me see the progressions of how this young kid developed from where they are here at 10, 8, 9, here. Let me see what they look like in high school, and let me see where they are when they get to the big leagues. And if you have that, I want to see the video because it exists now. So there are basic fundamentals that I think are overlooked. And Cal Ripken Jr. had an unorthodox swing in today's, guru things, but he's a Hall of Famer and did fine. Roberto Clemente, somebody showed a video of him. His whole lower half was off the ground pretty much. He moved his front foot and his back foot. But what you could see from the waist up is something that was consistent in successful hitting. And so when you're doing all these drills, have you done the time off the tee? Have you put in the 10,000 rule? Have you got that many swings? Same with throwing, biomechanically, I look at my footage and I pretty much threw a change up every single pitch because I don't follow through. I don't maximize, a lot of the things I've learned through being a parent, watching my son learn how to pitch. There's so many drills out there that are phenomenal that I wish I could go back and do. I tell Lily, don't let somebody put too much in your head, but go do it. And why I like connection balls is if your arm slot isn't exactly where you want it, by putting the connection balls in the certain places, it's for a feel. So there's talk about the guru, there's a purpose to that drill. Yep. And if there's a purpose to that drill, I'm not against it. It's just a matter of that you have to really put in the time, as I see with Lily. You have to get the swings every day, the 100 swings. Are you dedicated to the game enough to want to go out and do it on the day you don't want to do it? So there's so much more to it than just paying somebody to say, hey, make me the best hitter that ever played this game or the best pitcher or whatever. There's a mental component to it. There's a whole package that goes with it. And so it's deeper than just, going to a hitting coach. And I'm not against hitting coaches. I mean, please don't think I've paid my share of coaches to work with my kids and myself, I've also done lessons at times. So did I answer the question enough?
Tremendously. Like
Rip
better
down
than
the line.
Yeah. Lined like a bullet. It is a base hit. Okay. So personal bias here. I have a daughter who's a hockey player that also plays softball. So that's the order. So she's a dedicated hockey player first, but she also plays softball. So it's like she's putting in more time in hockey, and that's really her first love. Here's the thing. Here's the question. It dawned on me today. Who's the best person to ask this? It's Missy. I'm thinking like, to get her ready for softball season, maybe we should do more baseball type training. Faster bat, balls coming in a little faster. Just the speed of the baseball in general, whether you're throwing it, catching it, or hitting it, it seems like the speed might give you a little advantage. And then when you move to softball, it's like, okay, there's a little adjustment, but not much. It's like the motions, pretty much everything is the same. And I know we talked a little bit about some of the differences before with you, but what do you think of that idea? Or I don't have to pay myself. I could just be my own guru and be like, hey, getting ready for softball? We're going to play baseball. I don't know. What do you think? Am I insane?
Just to clarify, are you talking about doing drills by using baseballs, for example, you're going to throw underhand like softball and use baseballs?
No, I would think more in anything that has to do with speed, like a batting cage. So instead of going to a batting cage or a pitching machine where it's softballs coming in, you know, you could go higher speed. Like this, the baseball batting cages usually have higher speeds than, any softball one that you could find, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to just a batting cage that has pitching, there's nothing wrong with like in hitting a baseball. There's pros to hitting a baseball versus hitting a softball for your daughter because you see. I watched this piece on Altuve where he was hitting beans that his dad was throwing him, and so you hear of major league hitters, hitting golf balls or hitting smaller objects. So from that standpoint, there's nothing wrong with baseball, having her hit baseballs because obviously when the softball starts coming in, it's going to look a lot bigger and she's going to pick it up a lot easier. So there are like eye drills with that and hand-eye coordination drills with that. That's not a bad thing. If she was going to go play baseball, there's nothing wrong with it because you're still going to get the grounders, the whole sport. There's a lot of similarities. I don't think it's bad. But would she like it? To kind of ask the question back to you, what would she like to do? Because how old is she?
She's 15.
15. Well, I know 15, I teach middle school and she has to love it. So is she going to buy into it? Because is there going to be a value that she's going to get out of it?
Yeah, she's gonna love it when I say, "Hey, Missy said do it." that's my selling point right there.
Nice.
Yeah, I ran this by Missy. She played professional baseball. She said, "Yeah, it's probably a good idea." Okay, let's do it. And then maybe she'll come up to me and be like, "Hey, Dad, you want to have a catch?"
So what is her goal? What is her dream? Not Dad's dream, but what's her dream?
Her dream is probably the NHL.
And so softball is kind of like her hobby in high school.
Yeah, she just, she's always played it as a second sport. She was never big on hockey, on soccer or basketball or some of those other sports that you sort of like relate more to hockey. But, when it comes to softball, she just prefers it. She likes it more. Now she's not going to sit there and watch, a baseball game with me or even like a college softball game or something like that. She's just going to watch hockey when it comes to professional sports. But, when it comes to being out there and playing the game, she enjoys the softball more because of like the camaraderie.
Right.
There's time on the bench. You like a lot of kids are bored by that, but she likes that part of it. She likes that you get to talk and hang out and, pitch by pitch, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean softball is great. What position?
She's usually an outfielder and sometimes maybe second base, but
So as far as being ready for softball, you can go out and do footwork drills in the outfield with her with baseballs because once again you're tracking a smaller ball and the footwork is going to be the same. Baseball you have to cover more ground than softball, but you could still work on the first couple steps. So there's a lot. I mean, to answer your question, sure, baseball would be a great way to get her in shape and ready for softball.
Okay,
I would incorporate the softball as well because you have to throw, like holding the softball and throwing it, it's a little different. And I'd have to defer the question to maybe Kelsey Whitmore at Cal State Fullerton, who actually plays baseball and softball and switches back and forth. I've never done that, so I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to start to tamp it down here. One more thing, and then we'll jump to Die Hard Dads, or whatever version of we're doing today. So, and it also is about that, and this is about young girl athletes and who they are inspired by. And in hockey, I think it's very interesting because there's a lot of great American hockey players that are female. They play these games with Canada that are, if you've never seen them, it's like it's just phenomenal. In the Olympics, the World Championships, or whenever they get around, it's great. She'll watch them, but she's just much more inspired by watching her, New Jersey Devil guys. And I always found that to be interesting because I think as parents, like as a father, I look up and I see these, Kendall Coyne Schofield she's great. Like she's a great player. I'm like, oh, that's so like she's smaller. My daughter's not that big. I'm like, she's like a perfect one to idolize. And she's like, yeah, I'd rather watch the NHL. I just think it's kind of interesting that there's people out there like you that went through probably that whole thing. Like you didn't have anybody to look up to from that standpoint. So who, was it the Dodgers, all those Dodger guys that were your so-called idols that you tried to, pattern yourself after when you were growing up?
Yeah, Dodgers. I mean, the Reds, the big red machine. When I threw out the props to Hunter when he got drafted by the Reds, I said, "Oh, bring back the big red machine." I like different players, and I watched baseball. So probably the first time I ever watched women play sports, to answer your question, I had never really seen women play sports before in my life. I mean, I saw Billie Jean King, Martina, I'd seen tennis, I'd seen golfers on TV, but I was always a team sports player. So as much as I enjoyed watching the individual sport female athletes, that wasn't like I wanted to be just like them because I didn't play their sport. My dad took me to a college basketball game back in 1976. I still remember the exact game. It was Ann Myers. It was a UCLA basketball game, a WIA game, and Ann Myers, it was her 21st birthday. And that was the first time I had seen women play at that level. And in that moment, I fell in love with collegiate basketball, and I wanted to be the next, Cheryl Miller, Ann Myers, or anything like that. I just didn't have the experience in basketball. So I never ever reached that dream or goal. And my path went back over to softball. But those were the women that I looked up to. I followed Cheryl Miller. I was fortunate enough. My dad took me to see her play basketball in high school. And I just watched the Women of Troy, or what, it was a special that came out at the beginning of this whole pandemic. And by far, she was by far the best basketball player I've ever seen play, female. That doesn't mean there aren't players out there that are as good as her, but I'm still going to always say she was the best,
I think you liked Ann Myers, number 15. Remember her well, because she was married to the late Dodger Hall of Famer, Don Drysdale. I think that's your connection right there. I think.
And she also commentated the very first collegiate softball game that was on television back then when I was at Cal State Fullerton. And I remember how cool that was, because here I had watched her play, and she was like, I liked her and I'd idolized her. And she was the commentary to my game. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool.
That's cool.
That is cool. All right, Dawg. We're going to do our closing segment here that we like to call Die Hard Dad. And we'll modify it today. Dawg usually Dawg has the big advantage because he's got 6 kids to my 3. So he's always got he's literally has like twice the potential material that I have. Plus they're all 6 different ages as opposed to mine who are the same age. So Missy, you said you'd jump in for this segment, but if you want Dawg to lead off, he'll lead off. Or if you want to lead off, we could center the segment around you. We're all good. Whatever you want to do. You're the guest. You are our guest. So we defer to you. If you'd like to go first, you could just jump in. Otherwise, I'll make the dog do it.
You can go ahead and let the dog do it, because I'm not quite sure what
the segment is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very similar to my first time doing it as well, Missy. As Riz introduced the segment, I looked at him like, "What are you talking about?" So so I'm gonna do a quickie since we have 3 going on here. So this week was number 3. So Katie is one of my girls in college right now, and this was sorority bid week, or I don't know, try and join the sorority, whatever the thing is, this whole week. So she had all the interviews with with all the sororities down at school, and the tears, and you get invited to some, not invited to the others, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of stress all week. So went through, is she going to get a bid? She's not going to get a bid. What is this? So eventually she wound up getting a bid at a sorority that she was looking forward to and stuff. So it was a stressful week, mostly borne from by the Diamond mom, who was taking most of the stress on it. But I would get the spillover on that. But a good wound up being a good outing. She had a good resolution to it, and a good finish to the week. So that was the diehard dad story of the week.
Oh, uplifting, Dawg.
Yeah,
Uplifting.
not bad for once, right? Normally mine's a bit more of a downer, and there's a little more stress and drama. So this is actually a fairly uplifting one. It's sunny, it's 60. We've got Missy on. It's a great show.
Today it was up dog instead of downward dog.
Exactly. Yeah. Upward facing.
Yeah. So speaking of up dog and down dog, right? So Dominic, all of a sudden, like my kids are 15, but sometimes you'd think that like they're 80. This one's running around, oh, my back, oh, and the other one's like, oh, my knee. And they, the other, my neck, I can't move it. It's always like a ruse to just get out of doing some simple chore from your awfully, privileged life. So in this particular one, since we were talking about yoga, and I'm a yoga guy, although I haven't been much of a yoga guy the last year, unfortunately, Dominic is just, he can't move. Like his back is killing him or whatever for some reason. So I'm like, all right, big dog, Tylenol, and then open up my yoga mat and just lay on the floor and just see how that works. Now he's like incapacitated, like he can't move, meaning it's garbage night, right? Like that's why he can't move. And so he lays on the yoga mat, and then eventually he moves over to the couch, and then the next day. So fortunately for him, the good side of him is that he's got his own company, plug for Rizzo Automation. So any of your home automation needs, if you're in my area, go and find Rizzo Automation. There's your plug, Dominic, and producer Xavier. So the next day, he works with one of our friends is a handyman, and he does different jobs. And when he needs a little help, sometimes he'll call Dominic and Xavier. So he calls Dominic, and it's going to be like an all-day job, mostly doing like electrician-ish kind of stuff, which is one of his areas of expertise. A miracle. Like his back is fine, and he's able to work like an 8-hour day doing this. And of course, to get paid for it and everything like that. Then we're back to like, Monday and school, and the darn thing just acted up again. Could you believe that? Could you believe it? I don't know. Missy, yours was kind of like the baseball was laying around, you tripped over it, and your son was using it as, the ball to roll on. So that was right in the spirit of the Die Hard Dad segment. It was right there. So
very much so. And talk about like diehard parents. I'll just throw it because I'm not a dad, but I do play the role of dad as well. So with my youngest son, I'm here in California, so we're finally getting back to sports. And so he's a freshman practicing with varsity, and he's playing football. And so yesterday I saw him out at practice. He threw a guy down. He was he's at cornerback, and he threw someone down, and the kid got up, and you could hear him under his breath, not happy about it. And I said, well, dude, you're playing football now, so you're ready. I'm sure that it's going to be coming your way, because Dawg's the football player. So, you're going to throw him to the ground. Just be ready. You're going to take a hit. And he's like, he was all talking. And I was proud. It was a proud parent moment. But then there's that piece of me that's like, okay, well, he's a freshman practicing with seniors and juniors, a little bit stronger than him, maybe not taller, but bigger than him. And so if you're going to dish it out, you're going to have to take it. So we'll see how today went.
Wow, that was a good one. That was a solid Die Hard Parents segment there, as Missy comes prepared. The crafty lefty comes in. I'm like, okay, fastballs, peas right here. I'm trying to get, boom, big curveball. Hey, I'm a Rizzo. What? How is that possible? And then it was all good from there for our new pal, Missy Coombes. That's follow her. You can check her out. She's great on Twitter, Missy Wombes. You could play that, rewind it, and play it at slow speed if you want to hear the spelling again, or just look in the description because it'll be there somewhere. Um, I see you joined up on our Facebook group, so I'm hoping that this isn't just a one-off, because when things come up, I think that we would love to have you back again as those things permit. We'll see you at the family reunion. If you come out east to go see Lily, maybe you come hang and stay with the Rizzos. I don't know where she's at, but we're in New Jersey, so it can't be too far from wherever. Dawg's not that far from me.
Jersey as well.
Really?
Yeah.
There
My
you go.
family Rizzos are in New Jersey.
Oh boy. All right, this will be picked up offline.
Show to do, right?
Yeah.
This is like my Irish genealogy.
Let me go look at my family tree. No.
Yeah, that'll be the offline Zoom episode with the rest of the other Rizzos over here. Some of whom are watching or listening. One of them says Mescolo, but she's my sister Michelle was on, and she was giving you Rizzo props in there. So if you go back and look in the chat, you'll see that. So go follow Missy, check her out, look her up. You'll find a lot of good stuff from the Colorado Silver Bullets 94 to 96, and so many good stories from that, and from growing up through it to get there, and some of the stuff that's happened since. So we appreciate Missy being with us. FMSgraphics.com for all of your printing and promotional needs. Check them out. Some of Die Hard Nation has already started doing that. Schmitty, we're looking at you. And we encourage you to go to fmsgraphics.com. If you're Trevor Bauer and you've just switched teams and you need to send out change of address postcards or something, diamonddiehards.com. That's where you want to go. If you're Jake Odorizzi and you've just signed a new contract, you want to go there and maybe print up little pens with your new likeness and your new jersey on there. So check that out when you get a chance. You can follow us at Diamond Diehards pretty much everywhere. Look for us on YouTube as well if you like to watch the shows. And if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed yet, or do a follow, I think they call it, on Spotify, then please do that, because we need the support, and we're trying to grow this thing out as we hit as we approach very quickly the 1-year anniversary. Who knew? So that's going to do it for a wonderful show. Thanks again to Missy Coombes. For the Dawg, Jeff Healy, this is Joe Rizzo. Thanks for listening to us. Diamond Diehards is out.